files continue to come out, but there is a name that seems to be not going away. His name is George Joannides, and we're going to learn more about him because we're going to be probably hearing more about him as time goes on in real time. Joining me now is Gary Hill. He's the author of The Wizard of Oswald, who actually writes a lot about George Joannides. Mentions him quite a bit. So I thought, Gary, thanks for being with me.
Sure.
Okay, so first off, we're seeing a lot of George Joannides right now in the news. Tell me a little bit about who is he and why is he important?
Well, he was important because he was the CIA's propaganda guy in New Orleans. Actually, he was in the Miami station as a propaganda guy, and they sent him there to handle the Cuban DRE, which they were paying like 50,000 a month to handle their programs. Although they didn't get along very good with them, and they wouldn't listen to the CIA, didn't want them to do this and that, and they'd do it anyway. Uh, but the real interesting thing about Joannides is he was called before the House Assassinations Committee they brought him out of retirement to go be their liaison to the House Assassinations Committee. And he was the guy that was running the program, and they're asking him about the DRE, and he said, "I don't know who it was. I don't know who was running, but it was him." So he was stonewalling the House Assassinations Committee, and that right there is big news. But now they finding in these documents, they proving who he was. They also the Cubans were saying that their contact was a guy named Howard, and nobody knew who Howard was. The CIA denied there was even such a person. Now we find a driver's license for Joannides. It's a fake driver's license, and it's got the name Howard Mark Gerbel, Gebler, Gebler, Howard Mark Gebler. So that proves that he's Howard, that the Howard that the CIA, the Cubans were talking about. What's important about this is it proves that they were manipulating Oswald at least through the DRE. And it makes sense of all the things he was doing. He went to Bringuer's shop and said he would help them fight Cuba, fight Castro, and he brought in his Marine Corps manual and gave it to them. Next day they find him out on the street passing out pamphlets. So they go over and confront him. And of course, there's TV cameras there out of nowhere. And then Oswald goes into court and he doesn't pay the fine at first, and he stays in jail for a day, I think, or a night. And then he wants to talk to an FBI agent. So if you look at it this way, I mean, everything starts to make sense. What if Oswald was part of JFK's program to stop these CIA raids, and the DRE was doing this stuff? They were going into Castro, into Cuba, and blowing things up and trying to get us into a war after JFK promised that we wouldn't invade. So Bobby Kennedy turned the FBI into his ability to stop these raids. So they were infiltrating it. And if Oswald was an informant for the FBI and he was infiltrating the DRE, if he was infiltrating Lake Pontchartrain, if he was infiltrating Guy Bannister, and the Cubans find this out, then they know who he is and they set him up. And the FPCC was the big common denominator. Both the FBI and the CIA were out to destroy the FPCC. And after the assassination, they just died
They did. Yeah.
because of their association with Oswald. And Oswald was not really it was all fake. He had no members. He started this thing in New Orleans by himself,
Yeah.
but it was all for publicity, and it was all to set him up.
So let's go back to Joannides then. So who in his hierarchy, who would he have been working for or under or in the CIA?
Well, he was in the Miami station. He'd be under Ted Shackley, who was head of the Miami station. And and it's almost everybody knows that or believes that the assassination came out of the JM Wave. Uh,
And JM Wave being the Miami station that we're
that's where
talking about.
Morales and that's where Roselli and all those people were working out of Harvey. You know, they were all involved down there. And so that makes sense. But also because he was propaganda chief, uh, that leads us to David Atlee Phillips, who's head uh, of propaganda. And Phillips leads us to Jim Angleton, who was, and then don't forget they were opening Oswald's mail, even when he was in the Soviet Union, and that was Angleton. They were breaking the laws with all these programs that were illegal.
So Amspell
Yeah,
is the term for what?
but that's the DRE and the CIA's project was AMSPEL. Anything with AM is Cuba. Okay, so there was AMSPEL, there was AM Santa is another one. That was let's see.
Okay.
This guy that was head of the DRE before his name was Rocha. He became a doctor later, and he's the one that was supposedly responsible for the ad where they advertised in a magazine for assassins to kill Castro. You know, so and then they supposedly got upset and got rid of him and brought in Joannides. I mean, all this stuff is who knows, you know, but there's something going on.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So the significance of him lying before the house is itself an obstruction.
Well,
Is itself a
the
crime.
fact that he came out of retirement just to stonewall the House Assassinations Committee. I mean, what's his name was the head of the committee?
Blakely?
Blakey.
Blakey.
Blakey later, when he found out this, he said, "We've been had," because he believed in the CIA, and they kept holding things back and not giving him it, but he didn't believe that he was trying to push it on the mob, and you know the CIA couldn't do that. They wouldn't lie to me. And then he found out that they did, and he was he changed his tune completely in recent years, and it's because of Joannides. They knew they were taken. They brought him out of retirement just so that he would keep them from finding out the CIA's involvement with Oswald and the DRE. So, you know, and as soon as the assassination happened, within a day or two, already they were pushing, the DRE was putting out uh, the story that Oswald was a communist, you know, and he did it for Castro, and Castro was behind the assassination. And they had all this footage of Oswald passing out leaflets, and they had, you know, his voice on interviews. And I mean, they were setting him up. They have a record album of their interview on the Inca show with Oswald, and it's got his picture on the front. And if you listen to it now, it's like blatantly, you know, propaganda. You know, but back in those days, it sounds, you know, we didn't see through things back then. We took them at face value.
Right.
Now we see through, you know, Mockingbird. There's
Yeah,
no,
it's no different really than I lived
they're
three
only
lives.
gonna they're only gonna say what the CIA wants them to,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
corporation. And all the
Corporation.
media is corporations. So you see what we're up against.
Yeah.
And but now that Joannides is dead, and somehow I can't believe that Trump is letting this stuff out, but maybe there's something good coming out of it.
Yeah.
I
We'll see.
don't know.
All right. Gary, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, anytime. Take care.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Gary.